their lives in these sub-zero temperatures?
It's really hard to imagine what kind of level of desperation and what kind of life events could bring you to be at a point where you're standing on a beach in France, looking out at the UK and willing to put your life into the hands of those smugglers who will take you across in one of those little dinghies. I mean, everybody with compassion across up and down this country, we're devastated to hear of another four people who have lost their lives, but nobody is surprised. This is bound to happen. It was guaranteed to happen. It was predicted. It was obvious. It's in front of our noses every single day when we see these boats making that crossing. But in order to get to that point, when you're standing in France and you're willing to risk your life in that way, you have to have gone through experiences that us sitting here in our homes in the UK simply can't relate to. And so it's really hard to understand why would they be making that crossing. And the reality is that they have escaped from war, from persecution, from horrors, but they've also made a horrendous journey, and they have had awful experiences, probably risked their lives before many times over, whether that would be crossing through deserts or crossing the Mediterranean. They may have been held in detention centers, they may have been abused, they may have been tortured, they may have been pushed back time and time again. So at that point, if you try to put yourself in somebody's shoes who's experienced so much hardship, that last step of crossing the channel doesn't look the same as it does to you or I. And that risking your life once again, right, is just the next step, because these people hang on to hope, and the hope that they will be able to build a life in a country that will treat them fairly. And that's the UK for a very small minority of the people who make those terrible journeys around the world.
But
A very small minority
is
of
it
them do come to
really
the UK.
worth it when you say they've gone through such hardship in their home countries, they've travelled so far, and they pay with their lives?
It's just devastating to think that after all of that, between two of the richest countries on earth, people with no home, with nothing to their name, who have fled from atrocities, are being left to die. And the answers that we're given are always the same. They've been the same for 30 years at least. They've certainly been the same under every Home Secretary we've had over the last 12 years under this Conservative government. 6 Home Secretaries, all the same failed answers. We'll just build another fence, we'll pay for another patrol, we'll cut the rights of people who are here, we'll treat them worse when they are here. And none of this has ever worked. None of it will ever work. People move. People will always try to come to the UK. We colonized half the world, and now we have established communities living in this country from countries all around the world. And there are people who, when they flee from danger, they want to join those communities. Right? That is a
These
reality
are
to be managed.
illegal crossings, though, aren't they? And the government says it is determined to crack down on this business model
The government's
involving
been
the people
determined.
smugglers.
The government's been determined for years now. I mean, we were promised under Priti Patel that she would halve the number of crossings within 6 months. It hasn't happened, right? They've introduced a channel threat commander. Now, the latest last week was from Rishi Sunak saying that he's consolidating an office to deal with this. You know, we're going to send them to Rwanda. We're going to give them worse conditions here. You know, these answers have been tried and they have failed, right? Because the reality is that we need to give people a safe way to travel across that water. We need to accept that the UK plays a part in helping refugees. It's a global effort. People who are forced to flee their countries, every country needs to play their part to protect them. The UK is part of that. We take a very small number of people relative to the rest of the world. Those people who try to reach us, we need to give them a safe way. Just a travel document. You or I, we take the Eurostar or the ferry or a plane to get to the UK from France. These people are not entitled to do that. And that's why they're putting their lives at risk in this way, right? We need to give them a safe way across, and then we need to welcome them and let them get on with their lives and contribute to our communities. And our communities are struggling and they need people, right? These people have connections to the UK. They could settle in. They have fled from war and torture and persecution. We could just give them a fresh start. And instead, we're forcing them into this awful situation where we see, you know, bodies piling up in the Channel. We cannot let the Channel become another European sunken graveyard like the Mediterranean has been. We cannot allow that. We're a compassionate country.